Welcome to Math with Mr. J. In this video, I'm going to cover least common multiple, also known as LCM. Least common multiples are commonly used when working with fractions as well as other types of math problems. So least common multiples show up in a variety of situations. Now, when we're talking about least common multiples, let's break that down and think about what this means. Well, least means the smallest in value. Common, in this case, means that something is being shared. And then multiple, well, we get a multiple of a number when we multiply that given number by an integer. Think multiply or skip count when you think of multiples. Now that may sound a little confusing, but it's actually not too bad. I think an example will make it much more clear. So let's jump into number 1, where we have 3 and 6. Let's start with some multiples of 3. And remember, think multiply or skip count. So let's write the first 5 multiples of 3, and then we'll go from there. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. So I'll stop there, and then we'll write some multiples of 6 and see if we have any in common. And if we do, we're going to look for the least that they have in common. Now, those multiples go on forever. So I suggest writing 4 or 5 multiples for each given number, see if you have any in common, and then go from there. You can always extend your lists of multiples. So let's write some multiples of 6. So again, think multiply or skip count. So 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, times 3 is 18, times 4 is 24, and then times 5 is 30. So we did 5 multiples for each. Let's see if we have any common multiples. So we have 12 in common, and we also have 6 in common. But we want the least. So 6 is going to be the least common multiple between 3 and 6. So I'll put LCM, which stands for least common multiple, equals 6. Let's try another example and move on to number 2, where we have 4 and 10. So we'll start with some multiples of 4. So skip count, or think of it as 4 times 1, 4 times 2, so on and so forth. Let's skip count for this one. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So we'll write 5 for that one. Let's do 10 now. 10, 20, and you may notice that we have something in common there, and that's going to be the least common multiple. If you notice that you have a least common multiple, there's no need to keep writing out multiples. We have our answer. So 20 is going to be our least common multiple. So least common multiple equals 20. Let's move on to number 3, where we have 9 and 6. So we'll start with some multiples of 9 here. So 9, 18, 27, 36, 45. And now some multiples of 6. 6, 12, 18. And we have our least common multiple right here, which is going to be 18. So our LCM equals 18. Now, I do want to mention before moving on to number 4 that for these problems, we're going to have an infinite amount of common multiples. Since we have an infinite amount of multiples, we're therefore going to have an infinite amount of common multiples. We can always extend our lists further in order to find more common multiples. But since we want the least, we need to focus on that least. And once we have that least common multiple, we have our answer. Let's move on to number 4, where we have 12, 4, and 8. So we have three numbers, and we need to find the least common multiple between all three. Let's start with some multiples of 12. So 12, 24, 36, 48, and 60. Let's do 4 now. So 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. And lastly, 8. So 8, 16, 24, 32, and 40. So as we look at these lists, we do have some common multiples, but we don't have any common multiples between all three. And we need a common multiple between all three, and specifically the least common multiple. So what we can do, we can extend our lists until we find that least common multiple. Now the 12s, the multiples of 12, we're already at 60. So let's leave that list. Let's look at the 4. We're only at 20 there. So let's extend the lists of multiples for 4. So our next multiple is going to be 24. And that's going to be our least common multiple. 24, 24, and 24. So if you don't see a least common multiple, you can always extend your lists until you find it. So for number 4, our LCM equals 24. So there you have it. There's how you find the least common multiple. I hope that helped. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, peace.